The note lay on the kitchen counter, the messy handwriting scrawled on the back of an electric bill, leaving me stunned. "I'm done with you in this boring life. I'm taking everything, and by the way, this house has been sold. Enjoy what's left." My hands trembled slightly as I picked up the note and read it again, as if another glance would somehow change the words. But no, they were still there, clear, cruel, and without a single explanation. I set the note down and took a deep breath. I should have felt pain. I should have cried. I should have felt so betrayed that I couldn't stand. But strangely, the first thing that surfaced in me wasn't sorrow. It was a strange sense of calm. I picked up my phone, my fingers gliding slowly across the screen, then typed a simple message. Saw it. "Thanks for the heads up." I hit send. "My name is Lauren Carter. I'm 35 years old, and this morning I received a goodbye letter from my husband after 11 years of marriage." As I looked around the kitchen, my kitchen, not his, I realized that this moment wasn't an unexpected shock. It was the inevitable result of months, years of signs I had ignored, or at least pretended not to see. I am a handcrafted jewelry designer running my own brand that I built from scratch. I once believed that Ethan, my husband, was always supportive of my dream, but it turned out he only supported me as long as my success didn't surpass his. I should have seen this coming. The late nights at work but no meetings listed on his schedule, the whispered phone calls that abruptly ended when I walked into the room, the evasive looks when I asked about finances. And then there was the bank account. 6 months ago, while paying the bills, I noticed large sums of money being withdrawn from our joint account, transferred to an account I had never seen before. When I asked, Ethan smirked and called it a business investment. "You wouldn't understand," he said, patting my shoulder like I was a curious child instead of a grown woman, a business owner with a sharp mind. "I'm creating financial opportunities for our future." Part of me wanted to believe him, but another part did not. Instead of arguing, I did something I had never considered before. I protected myself. I opened a separate bank account, gradually moving my personal savings there without telling Ethan. I began documenting suspicious expenses, saving every email and message related to money. And most importantly, I reached out to Grace, my best friend from college, now a highly respected divorce attorney. When I told her everything, Grace simply looked at me for a long moment. "Lauren, you're smart, strong, and deserve so much better than this. From now on, you need to think like a strategist. Stop playing checkers when you should be playing chess." I nodded. The turning point came 3 months ago when I decided to refinance the house. Ethan was too busy with his investments to notice that I had put the house entirely in my name. He always assumed I was too naive to understand finances, but in reality, I had been preparing for this moment much longer than he realized. Now, standing in my brightly lit kitchen, I didn't feel like a woman who had been abandoned. I didn't feel like a failed wife. I only felt that the game had finally reached its final move, and I was the one holding all the pieces. I picked up the note again, this time with steady hands. Ethan thought this letter would break me. He had no idea that he was the one who had lost everything. I smoothed my hair, adjusted my blouse, and walked over to my desk. "All right, Ethan," I murmured, opening my laptop. "You want to play? Let's play." I opened my laptop, scrolled through my inbox, and immediately spotted an email with a bold subject line. "Urgent request. House sale documents." My heartbeat slowed. Not out of fear, but out of confirmation that Ethan was doing exactly what I suspected. The sender was Andrew Miller, the real estate agent Ethan and I had worked with when buying this house. I clicked on the email, scanning the message quickly. "Lauren, Ethan has contacted me about selling the house. However, when I checked the paperwork, I noticed that the house is solely in your name after the recent refinancing. I can't proceed without your approval. Ethan seems confident you'll sign, but I need confirmation from you before moving forward. Call me when you have a moment." I leaned back in my chair, feeling a smirk tug at the corner of my lips. Ethan really thought I would obediently sign the papers and let him steal my house? Before I could respond, my phone rang, a message from Ethan. "Call the agent immediately, sign the papers, you have 24 hours to pack your stuff." I didn't reply. Instead, I picked up the phone and called Grace. She answered after the second ring. "Ethan just tried to sell the house," I said immediately. There was a brief silence before Grace's voice came through, calm but sharp. "Lauren, this is the perfect time to make your final move. Do you have all the evidence ready?" I glanced at the stack of documents I had been compiling for months. Bank statements showing suspicious transfers, emails Ethan had left open on our shared laptop, and photos from the private investigator proving his so-called business trips to Las Vegas. Everything is ready, I confirmed. Good. Don't react just yet. Let him think he still has control. I nodded even though she couldn't see me. I spent the entire afternoon reviewing everything. Every paper, every piece of evidence, was a puzzle piece in the picture of betrayal Ethan had tried to hide. I remembered the last Christmas gift he gave me, a silver bracelet that I instantly recognized as a cheap knockoff. When I confronted him, he snapped, accusing me of being too demanding and ungrateful. But the truth was, Ethan wasn't broke, he just wasn't spending money on me. That night I received a call from Andrew. Lauren, I just spoke with Ethan. He seems to think you won't have any issue with selling the house. I chuckled. Oh, really? Would you like me to let him know you're not agreeing to this? I looked out the window, watching as darkness slowly settled over the quiet street in front of my house. I knew Ethan wouldn't give up easily. No need, I'll handle it myself. The next morning the doorbell rang. I didn't need to check the peephole to know who it was. When I opened the door, Ethan stood there, gripping his phone tightly, his face flushed with anger. Lauren, what the hell are you doing? His voice was filled with frustration as he stormed into the house without waiting for an invitation. I crossed my arms, standing my ground. What are you talking about? The house. Andrew says you haven't signed the papers. What game are you playing? This is my house too. I shrugged, walking slowly to my desk, picking up a thick folder and placing it in front of him. No, Ethan, this is my house. He froze, his expression shifting as he stared at the documents. I flipped to the next page. This is the refinancing paperwork. You were too busy with your investments to notice that you signed away your ownership rights when I refinanced 3 months ago. Ethan stood stiffly in the middle of the living room. The cold blue eyes I once loved now reflected only sheer panic. Lauren, you can't do this to me. We can talk, we can work this out without going to court. His voice was hoarse, half pleading, half furious. I crossed my arms, my gaze unwavering. Ethan, how else do you suggest resolving this when you were the one who dug this hole for yourself? Grace stood beside me, maintaining her professional demeanor, though her eyes gleamed with quiet authority. Ethan, I advise you to read these documents carefully. We have already filed with the court to freeze all joint accounts until the unauthorized withdrawals are fully investigated. Ethan's face turned pale. I walked to my desk, opened my laptop and turned the screen toward him. And here's a list of all the withdrawals you made over the past 6 months, along with proof that none of this money was tied to any legitimate investments. Ethan swallowed hard, his eyes darting across the numbers. How long have you been tracking me? He demanded. Long enough to know there's no way for you to get out of this, I stated firmly. I saw real fear flicker in his eyes. He wasn't just losing the house. He was facing potential legal consequences for misusing our shared finances. He had never considered that possibility when he wrote that note and tried to disappear with everything. Grace adjusted the files in her hands. We've already spoken with a judge about this matter. If you don't cooperate, we'll push for a deeper investigation into these transactions that could have serious consequences for your financial and professional future. I saw Ethan's hands tremble slightly. He was no longer the smug, overconfident man he had once been. He was standing at the edge of the downfall he had created for himself. Lauren, you don't have to go this far, we can settle this peacefully. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Like the way you tried to sell the house behind my back? Like the way you drained our accounts and planned to disappear? Ethan, you had the chance to handle this amicably, but you chose to betray me instead. Ethan stared at me, silent. He knew I was right. After a long pause, he exhaled shakily, setting the folder down. I need time to think. Take as much time as you want, I said evenly, but the accounts are frozen, the divorce papers are filed, and the court will have its answer soon enough. Ethan had no choice but to leave, his shoulders slumped in defeat. I stood still watching him go, with no intention of stopping him. When the door clicked shut, a strange sense of relief washed over me. No more lies, no more deceit. The game was over. A few weeks later, news about Ethan's financial troubles began to spread. The company he once took pride in was now facing serious issues due to the personal debts he had tried to hide. Those so-called business investments had actually been failed gambles, and now he had to face the consequences. I heard that he had to move out of the luxury apartment he had rented after leaving here. Now he was living in a much smaller place in the suburbs, trying to rebuild his life from the wreckage he had created. And me? I was no longer the woman I used to be. I stood in the living room, looking around the house I had once considered our shared home. There was no trace of Ethan here anymore. I decided to renovate the entire space, transforming it into something full of life, exactly the way I wanted it. The dull beige walls Ethan had insisted on keeping, I painted them a bold, deep blue. His old office was now my creative studio, where I could spend hours designing the jewelry I loved. My business was thriving like never before. After my story was featured in a local magazine, my orders doubled. I hired more staff, expanded my market, and, for the first time, I was featured in a major fashion magazine. No one called my business a little hobby anymore. Friends and family visited me more often. They looked at me with admiration, not because I had survived a failed marriage, but because I had reclaimed myself. One day, Grace came over with a bottle of wine and a bright smile. "Lauren, did you ever think things would turn out this way?" I laughed as I poured 2 glasses. "Not at all, but now I can't imagine my life any other way." Grace raised her glass. "Then here's to a new chapter." I clinked my glass with hers, savoring the sweet taste that spread across my tongue. I had made it through the hardest part. I had taken back my life. And I knew this was only the beginning. One autumn afternoon, as I was arranging my booth at a local craft fair, a deep, warm voice spoke from behind me. "These designs are truly impressive." I turned around and met the curious gaze of a man in his early 40s, his dark brown hair streaked with hints of silver, his sharp yet kind eyes studying my work. "Thank you," I replied, offering a professional smile. "I'm James Turner." He extended his hand, and as I shook it, I noticed the calluses on his fingertips, a familiar sign of someone who worked with their hands. "Lauren Carter," I introduced myself. James nodded, his eyes still scanning the jewelry displayed on my table. "I make wooden jewelry boxes. I come to this fair pretty often, but I don't think I've seen your booth here before." "I just recently expanded my business," I replied, feeling a sense of ease, knowing that for the first time in years I could say that with pride, without anyone belittling my work. We talked for a while about craftsmanship, the best types of wood for jewelry boxes, and how to properly care for silver to maintain its shine. It wasn't a conversation laced with romantic undertones, but rather an exchange between 2 artisans who truly understood the value of their craft. For the first time in years, I met a man who didn't try to tell me what I should do, who didn't pity me or dismiss my work. James didn't ask if I was married, didn't look at me with curiosity about my personal life. He was simply interested in what I did, and that made me feel more comfortable than anything else. As the fair wrapped up, James gave me a nod before heading off. "Wishing you continued success. Hopefully next time I'll see your booth in an even bigger spot." I watched him walk away, feeling something different, something I couldn't quite name yet. A few weeks later, I received a message from an unknown number. "Lauren, this is James, the jewelry box maker. I have a beautiful batch of walnut wood that I think you might like if you're considering a new product line. If you're interested, I can send you some samples." I looked at the message and smiled. "Send me some pictures, I'd love to see them." That's how the conversation started, simple and natural. We exchanged ideas, talked about materials, and discussed how handcrafted products could complement each other. No pressure, no expectations, just 2 people passionate about their work, sharing that enthusiasm. Meanwhile, Ethan tried reaching out to me several times. The first message arrived one evening just as I had finished a new batch of orders. "Lauren, can you call me? I think we need to talk." Prior to my husband dying? A few days later, another message came through. "I just want to know how you're doing. I'm sorry for everything." I still didn't respond. I didn't need to know how Ethan was feeling. I didn't need to hear his late apologies. Some doors are best left closed forever. One morning, as I was reorganizing my workspace, I happened to pull open a drawer and found an old, slightly crumpled piece of paper. I picked up Ethan's note, reading the words he had left behind on the day he thought he had won. "I'm done with you in this boring life." I laughed, not out of anger or bitterness, but at the irony of it all. My life was anything but boring now. I had just closed a major deal, been featured in a prestigious craft magazine, and was preparing to open my first store. I had met incredible new people, built a community for independent women to share their dreams and support each other. I looked down at my hand where I held a silver ring I had just finished. A special piece, not for sale. I picked up my engraving tool and carefully etched 3 simple words inside the band. Trust your strength. Just as I set the ring down on my workbench, the doorbell rang. I walked over and checked the peephole. James. I opened the door and immediately sensed something different. He no longer carried his usual relaxed demeanor. There was a slight hesitation in his stance, his right hand gripping a finely carved wooden box. I just finished this piece, I thought you might want to see it first. I took the box from him, my fingers running over the smooth wood and the delicate engravings. But when I opened it, I nearly stopped breathing. Inside was a silver ring, simple yet beautifully crafted. I turned it over and read the inscription inside. Trust your strength. I looked up at him, stunned. James gave a small smile. I remember you telling me about the special ring you made for yourself. But even the best artisans deserve to have something made for them, don't you think? I clenched the ring in my palm, feeling a warmth spread through my chest. Ethan once thought he could take everything from me. But what he never understood was that I never needed him to build my life. And as I looked at James, I realized something else. Maybe, after everything, I didn't have to walk this path alone. Life doesn't always unfold the way we expect, but sometimes, challenges open doors we never imagined. Lauren Carter lost a marriage, but she never lost herself. She rose again, stronger, more independent, and discovered her true worth. Her story isn't just about betrayal. It's about rediscovering inner strength. In reality, we all face unexpected turns in life, but the most important thing is never letting anyone else define our value. Lauren Carter has shown us that true strength comes from within. What do you think about her story? If you were in her situation, what would you do? Share your thoughts and don't forget to follow the channel for more real-life stories about family and resilience.